Hello and shalom. My question concerns an apparent contradiction, or should I say confusion, that we read in Matthew 27 verses 9 and 10. Here is the verse. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the value of him who was pierced, whom they of the children of Israel priced, and gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord directed me. Why would Matthew attribute this verse to Jeremiah when we know that it is a quotation taken from the prophet Zechariah? Thank you so much for your help on this one.
Thank you for your question. This is another important question which brings us to consider how the New Testament quotes the Hebrew Scriptures. Matthew 27:9 clearly says, Then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet. However, what follows was never spoken by Jeremiah. It was the words of Zechariah. The question is, why is this prophecy attributed to Jeremiah? This is an apparent contradiction. Apparent, I say, for there is no contradiction in the Bible. And when we encounter an apparent one, there's always something great behind it. It is like a call, like the sound of an alarm, telling us to go deeper and to investigate. First, how do the different commentators deal with this dilemma? One of them thought that it was an oral statement of Jeremiah which Zechariah eventually wrote down, but there's nothing which suggests such a thing. Another reason is given by Eusebius, a commentator and Christian historian from the 4th century, who said that the Jews deleted the passage from Jeremiah's writing. How did he ever get to this conclusion? He needed perhaps a scapegoat, so he found his, namely the Jews. His statement reflects, by the way, the obvious Christian anti-Semitism which covered the past 2,000 years of church history. They are so quick to trigger in the trigger that is in accusing the Jews. A third reason comes from both Augustine and then Luther many centuries later, who said that it was a simple slip of memory, like saying Matthew did not remember anymore. Can you believe this? Isn't the whole scriptures inspired by God? Now, how are we going to understand this dilemma? Let us look at the context. Let us go back in time and see who Jeremiah was, or how the people of the first century considered Jeremiah, so to have attributed to him the prophecy of another. Let us not forget that the Bible was written by Jews, and it is incumbent on us to try to find out how a Jew of the time would read this passage, for they were the first audience. And Jewish people would still be an audience today. We just need to make these words legible to them. Furthermore, Matthew knew very well what he was doing. In fact, he does not often mention the names of the prophets, but here he goes out of his way to do so. So there are some great reasons for it. So the mention of Jeremiah must have called Jewish attention, and for the reason we're going to look into it. First thing we can see is that at the time Jeremiah stood at the head of all the prophets. In the Talmud, Jeremiah is placed first in the order. This is what we read in the Babylonian Talmud. This is the correct order of the prophets: Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah, and the 12 prophets. Jeremiah then stood at the head of the prophets, so by mentioning the name of Jeremiah, all the prophets are included, as Moses stands for the first 5 books, and Psalms for the whole of the Ketubim, that is the writings. So Jeremiah did represent the Nevi'im, that is the prophets. And being first, the words of Jeremiah were for them of utmost importance. We read in the Pesikta de Rabba Kahana, a compilation of discourses on the Feast of Israel. One notices that the first words of the book of Jeremiah are compared to the 10 Commandments. He writes, the words of Jeremiah like the 10 Commandments. As from the 10 commandments flow the rest of the 603 commandments, so the words of the prophets are seen gathered somehow in Jeremiah. But why Jeremiah among all other prophets? He is the one, by the way, who experienced the Babylonian invasion and saw the Jews deported and the temple destroyed. The other prophesied about it, but did not experiment it. Jeremiah then is placed first among the prophets. But there is something else that is major about Jeremiah. Jeremiah was considered more than a prophet. He was a priest, and many believe that being the son of the high priest Elkiah, he himself was the legal high priest of the time. This is reflected in the Targum of Lamentation, believed to have been written before the time of Jesus. The opening words of the book says Jeremiah the prophet and high priest. And it was on the slip of the tongue, for they repeated in verse 2. And when it was told by Jeremiah, the high priest, that Jerusalem would be destroyed, and so on. This is quite significant. Jeremiah was high priest and prophet. This is another reason why he's placed first in the prophets. For us, this is even more important when one considers that it was the high priest who condemned Jesus to death. So Matthew brings out Jeremiah, who stands for not only all the true prophets, but is representative of the true high priest. How interesting that in Jeremiah's day, the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed. And here in the first century, the temple will again be destroyed now because of the high priest's rejection of the Messiah. So the place of Jeremiah as the high priest, prophet in the first century, and his experience of the evil invasion as reflected also in the book of Lamentation, and his prophecies of the reestablishment of the Messianic age explains why he is placed first in the prophets.